这条大鱼不去挑。确有几分手段，只是已经落后于时代。军入主行宫，
所以先变成了
很少见。鱼这不来了吗？
When the final banners were raised, the mountain and the entire battle upon it vanished without a trace. All that remained was a vast stretch of pale, empty ground and the shattered ruins of a palace. Chen Wan-yun and the others stood frozen in confusion. They had been protected, rescued by this mysterious group, yet none of them understood why. Before they could even gather their thoughts, another banner was unfurled. Space twisted. In the next instant, they were transported to the summit of a different mountain, silent, desolate, and towering high above the clouds. Violent winds howled across the peak. There, hundreds of men wearing bamboo hats stood in orderly silence. Only then did Chen Wan-yun and his companions realize the truth. They had been brought here by members of the Heavenly Demon sect. The realization made their hearts race. This sect had always been shrouded in mystery. The Imperial court had tried countless times to investigate it, yet every attempt had ended in failure. Now, not only had they aided the Imperial Preceptor, they had also saved Qin Mu's small group. That could not be a coincidence. Suddenly, every bamboo-hatted figure bowed deeply toward Qin Mu and Shi Yunxiang, addressing them respectfully as sect leader and holy lady. Chen Wan-yun and the others were stunned. Monk Yunku shut his eyes immediately, trembling with fear. He silently prayed that he would not be killed simply for seeing the faces of demonic path practitioners. Then a familiar voice spoke. Qin Mu calmly ordered everyone to rise. They obeyed without hesitation. Chen Wan-yun stared in disbelief. The leader of the Heavenly Demon sect was none other than Qin Mu, their own classmate. Yu King Hong asked in a shaking voice who the holy lady was. Shi Yunxiang smiled shyly. The hairs on Chen Wan-yun's neck stood on end. He noticed two figures among the demonic sect members, the directors of the Sword Hall and the Formation Hall from the Imperial Academy. His heart sank as he muttered to himself that they were surely doomed this time. Yun Ku panicked even more when Chen Wan-yun spoke those names out loud. He felt certain disaster had already struck, even though he had not dared to look. One of the hall leaders spoke coldly. Should we eliminate these children to preserve secrecy? Qin Mu raised a hand, calming everyone. They are my classmates, he said evenly. If they are willing to join us, they will be treated well. If not, his gaze swept across the quiet mountain peak. Then they will be buried in this beautiful place. Yunku's attitude changed instantly. He declared at once that he was more than willing to join. Chen Wen-yun and Yu King Hong exchanged quiet words. They quickly realized that this sect now had a deep connection with the Imperial court. There was little to lose by agreeing. Yu King Hong cautiously asked whether refusing would truly mean death. Xiang Xiang let out a soft laugh, saying it was merely a joke from the sect leader. But when Qin Mu did not respond to Yunku's nervous question about whether it really was a joke, the monk's face turned deathly pale. The heavenly prison seal was now riddled with countless fractures. From those gaps, violent storms and waves of destruction burst outward, tearing trees apart and grinding entire mountain ridges into dust. The clash between the sect masters was unimaginably fierce. Even separated by great distance and restrained by powerful ceiling formations, the aftermath could still be felt clearly. Qin Mu activated his emerald sky eyes to observe the battlefield, yet even with that divine vision, following their movements was nearly impossible. The figures moved too fast, their trajectories blurring into streaks of light and shadow. He could only estimate how many remained by tracing the fading footsteps and shattered energy patterns. Another master had fallen. Qin Mu froze for a moment. Yu Qinghong asked why the members of the Heavenly Demon sect were not joining the fight. Qin Mu replied calmly that the Imperial Preceptor did not need assistance. The best support, he explained, is giving him the chance to strike when the enemy's momentum collapses. Once that opening appeared, the Imperial Preceptor of Eternal Peace would show no mercy. The sudden assault carried out by the Imperial forces, made possible through the Heavenly Demon sect's teleportation, had already shaken the rebel sects to their core. Even the sect masters themselves were affected. Their minds wavered, their coordination shattered, and before they could regain focus, danger was already upon them. For an existence like the Imperial Preceptor, even a brief lapse in concentration was enough to decide life and death. Though the sect masters stood within the divine bridge realm, there was still a vast gap between the strong and the weak. As the Imperial Preceptor himself had once said, he was a straight line without angles. There were no openings to exploit. His cultivation was not merely higher, his mastery was absolute, and when he seized the initiative, he was completely unmatched. Qin Mu estimated that, if the momentum was used perfectly, the Imperial Preceptor could kill 4 opponents in a single decisive strike. What followed would depend only on how much strength he chose to reveal. Yet, no matter how intense the battlefield was, only a handful of people could truly read what was happening. To everyone else, the battle was nothing but flashes of light and rolling clouds of destruction. Even among the 360 hallmasters, most were unable to perceive the details of the exchanges. Qin Mu continued to stare into the distance. All he could see were rapidly shifting silhouettes, bursts of divine techniques, and sword lights cleaving through the air. From time to time, a light would vanish completely, silent proof that another expert life had ended. Now only 8 powerful figures remained on the battlefield. Excluding the Imperial Preceptor of Eternal Peace, Qin Mu counted 7 others still standing. The final phase had begun. But who were they? Qin Mu could see only surges of power, brilliant flashes of energy colliding in midair. The faces of the warriors were completely obscured. Annoyance welled up inside him. Missing such a battle was a tremendous loss. He wondered if he could awaken his heavenly eye. Carefully, he began channeling vital qi toward his eyes, attempting to construct a 4th eye formation, an extension built upon the pupils he had previously formed using the azure and emerald sky techniques. Yet the moment the qi flowed into his eyes, he sensed something unfamiliar riding along with it. Suddenly, the battlefield came into perfect focus, sharper than ever before. Qin Mu froze in shock and concentrated again. The clarity remained. But he hadn't completed the heavenly eye formation. That was when he realized the truth. Another eye was seeing through his own. A chill ran down his spine. Someone else was using his vision, observing the battlefield in precise detail, down to the sword techniques and even the warrior's facial expressions. Qin Mu shuddered. This was not his sight. It belonged to someone else, borrowing his body to witness the battle. His thoughts drifted back to the moment he had summoned the Dutian Demon King. At that time, the Demon King's consciousness and demonic power had flowed through Qin Mu's body and into the demon god statue. The 3-elixir sovereign body technique had made that transition possible. Later, when the disciples of Great Mountain Sect attempted to expel him using the demon banishment command, the connection had indeed been severed. But not completely. A fragment of the Dutian Demon King's consciousness and power had remained within him, which meant there was only one explanation. The Dutian Demon King was hiding inside his body, using Qin Mu's eyes to watch this battle. Cold sweat formed on Qin Mu's back. He wondered why he had felt nothing during all this time spent cultivating. What was the Demon King truly planning? He let out a bitter murmur. If Granny Sai carried a sect master within her body, then he himself carried the Dutian Demon King. The irony was suffocating. Still, Qin Mu did not act rashly. He remained silent and allowed the Demon King to continue watching. At the very least, this granted him an extraordinary advantage, the ability to observe divine-level combat firsthand. As long as only fragments of consciousness and power remained, Qin Mu was confident he could remove them later. For now, he chose to pretend he knew nothing. Only then did the battle truly reveal itself to him. The Imperial Preceptor's sword was not a physical weapon at all. It was forged entirely from vital qi, shifting and reshaping itself freely. His body radiated light like a living god. Qin Mu remembered seeing a similar glow once before, from the village chief. Every basic sword form the Imperial Preceptor unleashed was staggeringly complex and awe-inspiring. These were not mere techniques. Each strike carried layers of calculation and transformation woven deeply into its structure. Qin Mu's heart jolted. This was the sword Tao of the Tao sect. A sword path built upon intricate algebraic principles. The realization stunned him. The Imperial Preceptor must be a genius of algebra. Had Qin Mu known earlier, he would have sought guidance during their journey south. 3 figures were currently engaging the Imperial Preceptor. The poor teacher, the wanderer Li, and the true god. They were legendary figures of the older generation, each possessing terrifying power. The poor teacher wielded an enormous brush shaped like a horse's tail. Though his transformations were limited in number, they were refined and deadly. Wanderer Li was a true sword expert. His techniques were profound, but still inferior to the Imperial Preceptors. His 14 foundational sword forms had already fallen behind the era. He remained formidable, yet his growth had stalled. The true god Tien drew power from venomous insects, shaping centipedes, silkworms, green serpents, and grotesque dragons into weapons of destruction. One by one, those creatures fell from the sky, cleaved apart by the Imperial Preceptor's sword. Qin Mu judged that the true god would not last much longer. And beyond them, there were still 4 powerful figures remaining. The battle was far from over. One of them was Kitty Yu of the Beggar Sect, a master of the 100 Mysteries of Poverty, a bizarre technique that allowed his form to shift endlessly. Next was Spiritual Master Daoquan, the weakest among the remaining fighters. Whether he had survived by his own ability or had simply been spared was unclear. The third was Venerable Zikong of the Monastery of Great Strength. He wielded 4 major mantras, yet his body was riddled with wounds, and his power was nearly exhausted. The fourth was the Bronze Masked Man. Among all of them, his techniques were the most brutal and the most mysterious to Qin Mu. He wielded a method manifested as 9 dragon shadows, each striking with devastating force. The dragons shifted freely between offense and defense and could even command elements such as fire, water, and the balance of yin and yang. This technique had been cultivated to the brink of physical manifestation. Qin Mu's heart skipped. This was the Dragon Emperor Ninefold Art, an exclusive technique of the Imperial bloodline. There was no doubt. The Bronze Masked Man was a core member of the royal family. And that explained why the Imperial Preceptor had not killed him. Perhaps, he hesitated. Qin Mu was shaken and began to wonder who this man truly was. Suddenly, he sensed something approaching from the west. He turned sharply. A colossal, mountain-shaped apparition was advancing through the sky at incredible speed. It was not physical, but formed entirely from the combined aura of countless monks. Mount Meru. At its peak stood a gigantic golden Buddha statue, 10,000 rays of light shining behind its head. The Great Thunder Monastery had arrived, led personally by Old Rulai. Qin Mu's expression tightened. Why were they here? At that very moment, the Imperial Preceptor sensed danger. Without hesitation, he struck. In a single slash, Venerable Zikong was killed. Every member of the Heavenly Demon Sect immediately turned their gaze toward the floating Mount Meru. "Bald donkey," the Left Guardian sneered. "Bald donkey," the others shouted in unison. Even Monk Yunku, despite being a monk himself, joined in the mocking cry. He was a member of the Heavenly Demon Sect now. High above, Mount Meru hovered in silence. Arhats, bodhisattvas, and temple guardians looked down coldly, their voices echoing together. Creatures of the demonic path. Qin Mu smiled bitterly. It was clear that the relationship between the Heavenly Demon Sect and the Great Thunder Monastery was anything but friendly. The Right Guardian, wearing an arrogant grin, hurled sharp taunts toward the monks atop Mount Meru. A bodhisattva responded with mocking laughter, sneering that Sui was nothing more than empty bravado. Before the situation could escalate, Old Rulai raised his hand and calmed both sides. He reminded them that endless conflict would lead nowhere. What mattered now was the battle itself. Mount Meru began its descent toward the battlefield. Meanwhile, the Imperial Preceptor of Eternal Peace was still locked in fierce combat against the remaining powerful practitioners, intending to eliminate them before Mount Meru arrived. Old Rulai's gentle voice echoed across the sky. He asked the Imperial Preceptor and the Tao practitioners present to lend their aid. The sword key surrounding the Imperial Preceptor faded. He stopped his pursuit. Turning calmly, he greeted Old Rulai with a faint smile. He was willing to listen. Old Rulai spoke softly, urging all sides to restrain themselves. The battlefield held its breath. He suggested that the bloodshed should come to an end. The poor teacher and his remaining companions hesitated, but ultimately fell silent and listened. The gravely wounded true Lord Tian rejected Rulai's stance outright, urging him to join forces and eradicate evil once and for all. Rulai calmly declined. At that, Wanderer Li sneered, questioning whether the Great Thunder Monastery had already become a tool of the Imperial court. Rulai did not respond directly. Growing impatient, the poor teacher demanded that Rulai stop circling the issue and speak plainly. Only then did Rulai explain his true intent. He wished to create good karma, bring an end to cycles of vengeance, and preserve what remained of the heroes' legacies. Upon hearing this, the Imperial Preceptor remained silent.